good late Thursday, early Friday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now giving you an update. I know just getting that Storm Prediction Center day went out looking here a little while ago. And as we look ahead later on that Friday, we are expecting some strong to severe storms here across especially North Central and Northeastern Florida there. That dark green area is where the risk looks to be the greatest. Does include a little bit of West Central Florida and then in our area also southeastern Georgia. So just going to be monitoring things here carefully as we're tracking things. So you see Perry to Lake City up to about Brunswick, down through Jacksonville, Stark, Gainesville, over towards St. Augustine, you know, getting toward Palaca and Ocala, all under a low risk for some damaging wind gusts and large hail. There's that wind risk, there's your hail risk, pretty similar areas. Not really a formal tornado risk, though we did have a situation in Indiana later, you know, in that Thursday there, where we had a tornado apparently touched down, and it wasn't a formal tornado risk. It was a very one-off type situation, but it's just always important to have multiple ways to get alerts and stay tuned just in case something were to spin up. But that's not the threat. The threat is wind and hail. This has been a pretty nasty hail type of producing system further off toward the north and the west there. I know, you know, nasty weather delaying like the Braves baseball game earlier on that Thursday night there for a while because of the inclement conditions in North Georgia. Now you see just, you know, right on the edge of our area right now, our South Georgia communities, you see some lightning, you know, some heavy rain at times. This accident was severe for a while, but not formally warned anymore. As we're looking at things around 2 in the morning there, as we look at the Doppler perspective, but I know we're going to be paying attention. You know, it's going to be in the afternoon or evening where this dark green area really starts to see a ramp up here in that severe risk. So let me go ahead and kind of give you an idea of what to potentially anticipate here. So you see the temperatures right now, 50s, 60s here. That's, you know, not too bad one way or the other. We'll be warming up, and then as we get through this, we'll kind of cool back down a little bit for a short period. I know a little bit cooler for like that Gator men's basketball celebration at the halftime of the spring football game there at UF at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium on Saturday. Congratulations to the Florida Gators there on winning that men's basketball championship. It's their third in school history. I know I'm a Seminole, but gotta give them credit for getting that job done there. What a performance! You know, really in that tournament, 4 comeback wins out of 6. You just don't see that very often. So congratulations to them. As we go ahead and look at the overall forecast modeling here. So let's just start it off in current lightning zone here. You see around noon, there's not expected to be much. I mean, this stuff could develop a little bit earlier than what the model showed, but at noon it's not showing much at all. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here, and then as we get toward, like, you know, later on in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you know, it's really a slow progression here of developments. You're probably wondering, like, when is this going to happen here? When is this going to happen? Well, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock there, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you see really getting some development, and there's a chance if it were to develop that late, when I get the accident is bad. But some of the other model guidance just went a little bit different picture with it, so I'll kind of progress this on out. But as we kind of look at things here, and we'll try to kind of get to the end of some of these runs. I know it's a little bit tricky sometimes here, but let me get to the most recent. Well, that's not an update, but as you kind of look here, this one model here, this NAM model, tries to show eventually getting some redevelopment here, you know, as we get toward the evening hour, and it shows at points we could have some strong and severe storms. It's not going to take as much on radar, maybe, to get something to get warned even. I know we're seeing this further up toward the north and west to get, you know, hail and wind producers. So that's your main threat, gusts about 60 miles an hour, hail to about quarter size, give or take. So gonna have to pay attention later in toward that Friday around the evening commute through, you know, when you want to be eating dinner, and toward just a little after sunset. So that's kind of your storyline there. So like evening commute time, you know, considering it's a Friday, some of that starts a little bit earlier sometimes. So let's just say like 4 to 9 p.m. is when our greatest risk could be, give or take there. So that's kind of the storyline as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. You know, one thing, if this does hold together a little bit more than expected, this could be a different situation than what some of the models are painting, because if this kind of pushes on in further toward the south and east and it doesn't completely fall apart, it's going to leave us with some more cloud cover, which may make it harder to kind of maybe destabilize. But if you have enough existing action and start getting some destabilization, it may cause stuff to develop earlier toward today than anticipated toward North Central and Northeast Florida. So there's some questions here in the forecast. I've seen it happen before. Sometimes you won't maybe get this to completely break up. I mean, let's look at the modeling here. As I'm going to go ahead and kind of look here. This is what it's supposed to look like at 2 o'clock. It does have it on the NAM. Let's try triple R. Okay, so 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it has it broken down a little bit more. And this kind of breaks everything down to even, you know, nothing. And if that happens, then eventually we should be able to destabilize enough. But lingering cloud cover can affect convection here toward the south later on. I know not a formal tornado risk around here, but that's a different storm in eastern North Carolina as we look ahead later in toward that Friday. So we'll be watching for that there in the national picture. But no local warnings right now. We haven't had any local warnings from this. We had a bunch of warnings. I mean, let's go back 4 hours out. We had, you know, area where there was a big, you know, threat in play in terms of the wind and the hail potential, not, you know, something overwhelming. We see the watches there that were in play, and these severe thunderstorm warnings and all the damage reports, and that broke down for now. But eventually, when we get some of that instability kind of kicking back into, that's to give us an extra there per se as we're looking at things. So again, just gonna go ahead and give you guys the very latest here. We'll be on as needed later on Friday to get you guys through it here. Again, not that big of a deal. But, you know, Star Gainesville, we've missed out on a lot of these events here, really toward our eastern zones, not toward the western zones. I mean, we had 5 tornadoes there, 4 of those in the western zones, per se, back on that Monday, the day the Gators did win that national title in men's basketball. But we had tornadoes toward like Leon County, you know, Grady County, and the like there. You have 0, you have 1, same even in Ware County, as we were looking there Monday evenings. And that was something that was worth watching there for sure. And all those debris signatures there on the screen. I'm surprised we didn't have even stronger tornadoes, you know, into more like the EF2 range, really being more prominent with the debris signatures. But it's about what, you know, the tornadoes hit and the damage that is observed. And I know some of that tornadic accident may have went over like water bodies, and that might have helped to make the debris signatures look a little bit worse, potentially. But, you know, light to moderate damage, and I mean, when I say moderate, really, I would say severe damage. You know, like a mobile home got destroyed even, South Florida, for instance. So, you know, that's severe damage, but that's how mobile homes can be. You know, it's not going to take, you know, the winds, you know, getting really high and just completely destroy that. That's why it's so important to not be in a mobile home in a tornadic situation. So that's why it's important to be in a site-built structure. So just continuing to give you guys the very latest here in the Florida Weather Center. I know it's you know, hard to believe it's already been 3 days since all that severe action was going on. Of course, we're going to watch our local threat on our Saturday, or on Friday, excuse me, coming up, but not on Saturday. Saturday's going to be pretty good for that UF celebration there, you know, Saturday afternoon in Gainesville. As we get toward Monday, there could be a national severe story that starts to take place. As we get toward like Ohio and some of those areas of damage and winds could be a storyline. You know, as we get up toward the north, I won't get into model guidance with that. But as we kind of look at things, I know toward that Saturday up there, gonna be a tracking things, gonna be a monitoring the situation, you know, as we get toward that Monday. So I also have a fire risk here for the south ahead of the rain, but I'll get to that here in a moment too, just seeing some of these stories. But on Monday, so kind of getting my days mixed up because I've been, you know, so busy and then off and the like. But on Monday there's a threat on the 14th, Louisville in Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You know, that's an area where there'll probably be more damage and winds, so hopefully we won't have to cut in that day. But, you know, something that will be monitored, obviously, on the national level here. Not turning logo red for that, or a local threat for that matter. It's just there is a little bit higher confidence in that if we get something severe, it could be around Stark or Gainesville here you know, which we haven't really had too much of, quite honestly, this year. We had so many risks, but they've kind of, you know, dwindled on down the threat that they got toward the east. But this stuff could actually be developing over historic Gainesville, Lake City area. And, you know, that could turn severe pretty quick on us. So that's why I want to make sure we give you guys a heads up here in toward the weather center. I know we're watching a rip current risk around. There's been a fog risk that we've been monitoring here in the weather center, as well as we track things, you know, here at points. So, you know, just some different things that we're keeping our eyes on here in toward the weather center, North Florida and South Georgia. Again, you know, not that big of a risk here as we're looking ahead toward this Friday, but just 1 out of 5, but 1 out of 5 be problematic before the word dark in Gainesville, Stark especially. You know, points, I believe those days there with tornadoes in late 2020 and 2021, both are marginal risks. So tornado threat with this is not, you know, really there. It's, you know, not going to say zero, because we, you know, saw almost a zero threat in Indiana, and then they had a pretty significant tornado on the ground. Things developed in a very odd situation. About our only maybe tornado warning of the whole day, I think it was, there in Indiana around, I believe it was Princeton, Indiana. There, so, you know, that just developed, and it was already in the ground before they could get the warning out. I think it had been in the ground a little while around Princeton, Indiana, because, you know, it's just an odd setup there, odd direction, odd everything. And there's probably a debris signature with it for several minutes before they, you know, got the tornado warning out. It's just sometimes these situations are tricky, the way the radar reads things and the like. So, you know, that was a real one-off here in the meteorology, but we're just going to watch it mainly for wind and hail later on that Friday. It's not a guarantee if we get too much convection in here to the northwest. That kind of weakens the stuff to the southeast, and that it doesn't allow, you know, enough clearing, enough energy. But if we get the energy, I mean, I have surface based keep on right now. There's none really over land. But if we start getting that to come in here, then that could be problematic. So we'll just continue to track things here in toward the weather center. I mean, problematic, and it'd be marginally severe weather. It'd be, you know, it'd be kind of like summertime severe weather, but maybe a little more widespread. So toward like Stark, Gainesville, and the like here. So just kind of giving you that heads up. 1 out of 5 risk. I'm probably making a bigger deal out of it than I need to. It's just the idea that's going to kind of focus around North Central Florida, which, you know, there's all these risks that, you know, been a lot higher than this in our 62 county area, but they haven't really had their genesis or regenesis here, redevelopment, whatever you want to call it, right over North Central Florida. So it might kind of, you know, get pretty nasty kind of quick here. So stuff could just start to fire, and we get thunderstorm warnings here pretty quick. And I don't want to get folks caught off guard there. You know, Friday at 5, 6, 7 o'clock is not exactly, you know, a situation where storms will be top of mind. So whenever thunder roars, go indoors here. As we're looking at things, you know, those Friday evening plans may get disrupted by these storms. You know, not really a summertime pattern, because this is, you know, boundary. We're gonna have cool air coming in behind this, but it's just, you know, the idea of it in a way. You know, getting some of that development popping up on us here, you know, and redevelopment that could kind of catch some folks off guard. So that's the storyline there. Let me go ahead and get into the graphics. So that rainfall forecast, most of the rain that you're going to see with the potential for North Central and Northeast Florida is going to be for later today, later on that Friday. And of course, when we're not on, you can go to cloudweather.com/radar for an interactive look at things. But you see Lake City there, half an inch over toward McClinney, and then Stark, Jacksonville. I know this says a little north, but we'll see. You know, in that vicinity, it's possible, you know, set to more toward the I-10 corridor. But these keep updating, and they probably, you know, since I even got this together, they might have sent out a new update on this even. But the point being is, you know, some rain, you know, where it's set up could be, you know, half inch. We need the rain still. So I was alluding to that fire risk. There is a fire risk here. As we're looking at things toward the south, like there's a red flag warning, which you can also kind of call fire weather warning toward like Volusia County, Daytona Beach, Orlando Orange County, and Osceola County, which will include St. Cloud on that Friday. So, you know, it's going to be windier and drier down there. You know, we'll have wind up here, but won't be as dry. We're going to have some storm development. But, you know, it could be a situation where any fires that develop will likely spread rapidly. So outdoor burning, definitely not recommended there. I wouldn't even recommend it up here, really, just because, you know, the winds could be kind of getting gusty, and then we have lightning, and it's still, not exactly an ideal setup here. And we're looking at things, and the elevated fire danger kind of starts, right maybe at the very southern fringes of our area, a little bit of Flagler, Marion, and Putnam. But yeah, just be on the safe side, even further north, because it'll be pretty windy here at times, out ahead of the storm acts, and then, there's a chance some of these spots won't get as much rain, and then you have some lightning strikes, and that can always start a fire too. So, because, it just kind of depends. But these storms could have some hail potential in them, so just a heads up. Bradford County, one of the 62 counties, that's where we're at. We're always giving you the latest here. We're always on for any tornado warning storm. We went to the 62 counties, but we'll be on, as warranted for the severe thunderstorm warnings here that are likely, not a guarantee, but likely to get issued here later on that Friday. Make sure you go for the latest on Facebook, KC Cloud Reacts, Cloud Weather, Twitter, which is also the X platform at Cloud KC, YouTube at Cloud Weather, Twitch Cloud Weather, and then cloudweather.com has all the different platforms listed there, and your interactive radar. So we're also going to be looking here at the fog risk as we get ahead here into the timeline. So just make sure, hazardous driving conditions due to low visibility. So just be careful with that. Something you always got to keep in mind. Not all these patterns will give it to you. Seeing some fog, and some of the sensors are still getting it towards some spots of the area, but a lot of spots are okay. I saw Cecil there was down a good bit. So just something to kind of keep in mind here as we're tracking things. And the Word Weather Center, I know we're not in alert mode. We had that red logo up for alert mode the other day there. But we're still going to pay attention later on that Friday here on this 11th of April, 2025. I know I do want to, if you haven't been watching over the last year or so, it's coming up on the 1 year anniversary of my father passing away there. He was 85 years old. He lived a great life. And I'll miss him so much here. April 14th to make 1 year since he passed away. And I miss him every day. Meant so much to me and, and the family. His beloved wife, Katie, and just all his children, including me. He meant so much to us. As we're, looking at that there. This was just a couple months before he passed away, actually. He just gotten out of the hospital, and this was a picture here that, got in front of the chroma key as he had just celebrated his 85th birthday. Sadly, that was his last year, as, passed away a couple months later up at Middleburg there. So, let's go ahead and take a look, though. Give you that planning forecast now. So there will be a severe threat as we look ahead later into that Friday. 60% chance of shower thunderstorms, 80 for the high, and then you see a cool down there for that Saturday. I know UF basketball championship celebration there at the halftime of that Gator spring game. And FSU had spring weekend last week. Didn't have a spring football game. Don't have one this year. Changing things up a little bit. Head coach Mike Norvell, but as we're looking ahead there, I know, FSU softball, hopefully that, they're going to be a championship contender coming up. I hope FSU baseball is too, but they are really struggling, and there are a lot of injuries now. Hopefully they can turn things around, because right now things for this season, for the long term, they're fine, but for this season, they're not headed in the right direction, and they need to turn things around. FSU baseball does in a hurry. Or this could be a situation where they're not even hosting a regional, if things keep trending the way they are. The pitching has been just, something that really needs improvement. As we go ahead and look here, FSU softball, though, they're doing pretty well. Of course, keeping my thoughts and prayers with head coach Lonnie Alameda there. She's battling cancer right now, so but team's doing really well. They're on the field, and that off the field battle so important there. As you see, the rain chances drop off for Saturday towards Sunday, not much of one, and then a little bit of something Tuesday. Then we cool back down just a tad, but we're kind of in that pattern. We're above average most of this period for the highs, but we do have some below average points. Like Sunday morning's gonna be pretty cool. Around 45 or so as we're looking at things. So even that Saturday afternoon, that's still, get up there a bit, but that's pretty about as good as it's going to get. The rain chance will be over by the Saturday afternoon. That 20% for very early Saturday morning. So I don't think the weather can get much better probably Saturday afternoon in Gainesville. There may be some breeze there going. But, you know, just overall, that weather looks really, really nice there as we're tracking things. So, gotta be watching out for rip currents at the beaches here with some of this pattern that we're in. I mean, some of these days will be not warm enough to want to go to the beach, but, you know, just kind of watching things, tracking things here in toward the weather center. So, that's your forecast right there. That's your forecast, and you see the trends here. We're just going to be continuing to track and watching out here for that rain later on that Friday. We need the rain. We really do. We don't want the lightning, the hail, or the wind potential, though. And we're going to get some of all that here around, you know, North Central Florida. Could be Bradford County, could be Baker County, Union, could be all of them. Alachua County, you know, 4 to 9 p.m., give or take, is when probably you'll have the greatest potential as we're tracking things. And we're in that range, give or take. So that's, you know, going to be something we're watching for here as we're tracking. And we'll give you the updates here as it's warranted in toward the weather center. So let me go ahead and pull back up here the map. Pretty cool up there in north southwestern Georgia as we're looking at things. Some of those cooler temperatures there. With that rain, I mean, it's kind of cool, but sometimes hail weather here. We could have some hail potential later on that Friday, as I've alluded to here. That green area highlights that. This is your wind potential. This is all of them combined. So we'll be paying attention. We'll be tracking things. Let me see if there's any questions or comments before I wrap things up here tonight. I don't see anything, but just thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for trusting me. Have a great night. Have a great weekend there. Again, later Friday, probably having to cut in some. But after that, the weather, you know, doesn't look to be too big of a deal. So I'll be back here, you know, again, later Friday as warranted with the latest updates. If for some reason we'll have to come back on later Friday, we'll be on late Tuesday with another formal update here from the Weather Center late Tuesday, early Wednesday. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. And again, we'll be, you know, watching things later Friday for some strong and severe storms all around.